Today, we have many treaties that limit certain tactics or weapons in warfare. But what if we go further back? Why and how did bans on certain weapons work in medieval times? And why specifically did the Catholic Church ban crossbows? The first argument you might think of is that the crossbow was simply such a powerful weapon that it had to be banned. But that is not really the case. As I outlined in my longbow versus crossbow video, longbows, not just crossbows, could pierce and kill knights in armor. Maybe not as well, but it was known to happen. So the next argument would be the lack of training requirements. Unlike traditional weapons, such as the longbow, which needed years and often decades to become effective at the weapon, the crossbow could be learned and shot within hours and perfected within weeks and months, allowing mere peasant soldiers to kill heavily armored knights from a distance with relatively little training. This would undermine the feudal hierarchy, where noble knights represented a privileged warrior class that relied on their superior equipment and combat skills to dominate battles. The church feared that this shift in power dynamics could destabilize society by eroding the traditional social order and diminish the perceived divine authority of the noble class. While the argument isn't exactly false, it wasn't really the main concern of Pope Innocent II. The real main concern of the Pope was the mass killing of Christians in Europe. Although you might think of the Crusades, the banding together of Christian Europe to push back the Muslims from their territory, that was a major exception, as Christians in Europe at the time battled and killed each other constantly. So, to try and limit the number of Christian deaths, Pope Innocent II at the Second Lateran Council in 1139 stated, "We prohibit under anathema that murderous art of crossbowmen and archers, which is hateful to God, to be employed against Christians and Catholics from now on." Wait, hold on, it says "and archers." Yep, that is right, crossbowmen and archers were banned, not just crossbowmen. So, since the crossbow and longbow were both banned, the argument that the crossbow was some uniquely powerful weapon is not true. And even the argument that the lack of training required for it scared the Catholic Church isn't exactly true either, since it is pretty clear the main concern was simply that it was a ranged weapon. Pope Innocent II clearly saw any ranged weapon as too dangerous to be used against Christians. And as you can see, the ban only applied to Christians, so any deployment of ranged weapons against Muslims, Jews, heathens, or anybody else was fair game according to the council. Anyone who violated the law would have been excommunicated from the church. However, if a law is never really enforced, it isn't even really a law. We can see this in another decree during the Second Lateran Council, which stated, "We entirely forbid, moreover, those abominable jousts and tournaments in which knights come together by agreement and rashly engage in showing off their physical prowess and daring, and which often result in human deaths and danger to souls. If any of them dies on these occasions, although penance and viaticum are not to be denied when he requests them, he is to be deprived of a church burial." So although the Catholic Church tried to assert moral authority over military practices between Christian kingdoms, the decree basically did nothing. Most Christians ignored the ban and carried on killing each other with their crossbows and longbows. Not to mention the spears, swords, axes, and hammers, which apparently did not bother the Catholic Church.